muffled.
They heard it.
All of you hear that? Good. Good evening and welcome to the Community Consolidated School District 21, October 20th, 2022 Board of Education meeting. First order of business is to establish a quorum. Secretary Riddick, if you would call roll.
Phil?
Aye.
Debbie?
Here.
I am here. Stacy Allen?
Yes.
Arlen?
Aye.
Bill Harrison?
Here.
Stacy? Getz? We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. If everyone would please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Flags over here. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. For anyone of our public that wishes to address the board during the public comment section, there are forms down over to my right, I believe. Just fill that out and drop it over here, and we will get to that at the appropriate time. Go into board communications, and before we go around the table, I have a special communication. This is Principals Week. Yes. And we have a proclamation from the governor, which I'm going to share. Just one page, so please bear with me. Whereas school principals play an integral role in the education and growth of children in elementary, middle, and secondary schools across the state of Illinois. And whereas school principals are responsible for promoting education and building relationships with teachers and parents to ensure that each child receives equitable educational opportunities and services to reach their potential. And whereas a primary responsibility of the state of Illinois is to preserve and improve resources for schools so that all students have access to quality education and foundation for a successful future. And whereas the Illinois Principals Association, which represents over 6,000 educational leaders statewide, believes that learning is a lifelong process and that the education of our children is of the highest priority. And whereas school leaders face many obstacles in supporting and educating our young people, and through their perseverance, devotion, and passionate leadership, that Illinois continues to produce quality, career-ready students. And whereas school principals have continued to face unprecedented challenges since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic and have worked tirelessly to provide mental health, social emotional support, and uninterrupted learning to the members of their schools since 2020. And whereas we must continue to encourage, support, and recognize our school principals who have a positive impact on Illinois students and the educational system in the land of Lincoln. Therefore, J.B. Pritzker, not Phil Pritzker, J.B. Pritzker, Governor of the state of Illinois, do hereby proclaim October 16th to the 22nd, 2022 as Principals Week, and Friday, October 21st, tomorrow, 2022 as Principals Day in Illinois. And this was signed the 16th day of August in the year 2022. Governor of Illinois, no relation. Okay, we'll move further into board communications. Let me briefly give voice to something that I'm sure all of my colleagues and the staff and probably most everybody in this room and in our community feel. And that is over the last couple of weeks, we have seen some behaviors, some incidents that defy the type of educational environment that we wish to provide. There have been issues that we've read about, we've heard about. Principals and staff have been dealing with behavioral issues since we came back in person from the pandemic. As stewards of our community, the Board of Education, together with our administrative staff, have found themselves responsible for responding and reacting to several incidents over the last couple of weeks that in past years they would not have had to. It's serious, It's a community-wide, statewide, nationwide issue. And as stewards of our community, I would ask or suggest to Dr. Conley that perhaps we can be a catalyst in conducting some type of community-wide event, conversation, discussion that takes this into account, and perhaps together we can attack and address some of the things that have happened recently. And I would hope that would involve the various villages that we represent, fire department, police departments, perhaps faith leaders, to really take a look at what it is that we might be able to do to address the issue. Dr. Conley, if you... And with that, we'll move on to our rest of board communications, and that perhaps might lead in well to Stacy.
Very good. We had a what's the name of that committee? I can't read it. Community Engagement and Strategic Partnerships Committee earlier today. Wow, that's a mouthful. We discussed a number of issues, including the events of the community and the opportunity to engage all of our stakeholders in the community regarding gun violence and gangs, and I think just an overall uneasiness in the community right now. And so we've charged Dr. Conley with looking at a number of opportunities. We discussed the ribbon cutting coming up for our groundbreaking. Do we need to announce dates now, or are we going to keep them?
Well, they're still tentative. So
that's what I thought. All right, so we talked about the ribbon cutting for our new service center, which, if you haven't seen it, the letters are up on both sides, and it's very exciting. We discussed the opportunity to have a real estate agent breakfast coming up early in next year, and the opportunity to engage some of our community leaders for my favorite topic of conversation, which is family learning. So I think one of the points in the conversation today was really, it's multifaceted on some of the stuff that we're already doing in addition. And so what we're hoping to do is brand the family learning program, but in addition to that, to really draw the lines between some of the wonderful work that's already going on now in the community and some of the stuff that we had from, what I would call like OG family learning, and then re-engaging that partnership with Harper. So it was I think we had some really good conversations, and we're really excited to get to work. A number of my colleagues joined me at the Taste of the Town last night, which I think is another just great opportunity to draw those connections back that has sort of eroded back after after the pandemic. And so we're really, I thought last night, and thanks to everybody who could make it, but it was really a great opportunity, and I want to thank Dr. Conley for joining me at the Chamber of Commerce board meeting a couple weeks ago to really educate some of our business leaders on some of the amazing stuff going on in District 21 and how they can get involved. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Stacy. Does anybody have any questions for Stacy? Okay, see none, we'll move on to NSSEO update. Debbie?
Okay, well, as everyone is aware, we are in the middle of the beginning of a superintendent search. We did choose our search firm of Hazard Young and Atiyah. We had our first committee meeting Tuesday to discuss where we need to go, doing a survey and all of that. So that is just starting. Then we also had the biggest fundraiser that NSSEO does for their foundation, which is their bingo night. We had over 150 attendees, which thank you, Bill, for joining me there. And they made almost $15,000. And all of that money goes towards internal mini grants for like adaptive PE items. So each of the teachers can put out requests for their grants, and that's where it's funded through. And we had our first of 4 meetings for the Equity Action Committee. There are 25 people there. I'm the board member that's representing all of us. And it's a lot of work, but it's going to be great because equity for NSSEO looks totally different than it does for anybody else, because we have to deal even more with the families. And I mean, every student has an IEP and a 504 plan, so there's already the equity built in there, but looking at the teachers and the families and all of that, it's going to be a lot of work. And I'm on the systems group, which talks about policy, which is my thing anyway, so I like policy. But that's it for NSSEO.
Any questions for Deb? See none, we'll move on to EdRed update, Bill.
Thank you, Phil. We had our kickoff luncheon 2 weeks ago. It was an excellent presentation on school safety, and the new format allowed for more networking before the presentation and the lunch began. I know Dr. Connolly and I were able to speak to a number of our local legislators where we could update them on the progress of the new building, as well as discussing how well the administration and the staff have been handling all of the new students we've been receiving over the last few weeks. Arlen, Stacy, and Jessica also were able to attend, so thank you all for that. EdRed's first member meeting of the year will be held on Friday, November 4th. It will be a joint meeting with the Northwest Suburban Business Officers, and there will be an ability to attend virtually for those who wish to do so. Watch your email. And that, I'll go over to IASB now.
Okay, please do.
Quick reminder, the North Cook dinner is next Wednesday night at Evanston Township High School. The topic will be a discussion of Evanston Township High School's equity journey. Completely separate note, yes, I was able to attend the Taste of the Town last night with Stacy and Arlen and Phil. And Stacy, you're right, the ability to talk to some of the people in the community and to hear, for them to realize, the trustees and the rest of that, what's going up next, next to London, and how excited they are with what we're doing. If you look around our community, whether it's our building, whether it's the new Indian Trails libraries, our libraries, what's been going on at Heritage Park over the last few years, it's amazing what we could all do together to build the type of community that we want to have. And then finally, Debbie, yes, it was enjoyable to go to the bingo night with you. I was an almost winner many times and a never winner the whole time. But it was tremendous to see the support that NSSEO has in the community. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Bill. I'm not sure if we mentioned this last month or not, but there are a couple of openings at IASB, including the executive director position. Tom Bertrand is leaving IASB at the end of June 2023. And the associate executive director for government relations, Shelley Bateman, has accepted a position with Sigma 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 as their new executive director. So they are currently will be advertising shortly for the executive director. There, as I remember 5 years ago, when I was president of the association, and we formed our search committee from within. So they're in the process of doing that currently. Both Dr. Bertrand and Simon Campworth, who is IASB's current president, are scheduled to be at next week's North Cook Division meeting as well. So just wanted to add that. North Cook Intermediate, Arlen?
Nothing from North Cook. We met actually right after our meeting and reiterated the quarterly presentation that I sent out to everybody. Everything is going well there, and they did approve a couple of hires, but the organization is doing quite well. Our count of numbers of students, as you know from the last meeting, is up, and we all understand why that is.
Okay, thank you, Arlen. Any other, Jessica, anything to share?
Yeah, just a couple quick notes. With regard to EdRed, I did enjoy the networking portion of the luncheon that they had. Unfortunately, I was called away on a personal matter and wasn't able to attend the substantive part of it. But I was able to catch up with my former general counsel at ISB, well, one of them, who is currently a partner at Franzik, Nikki Baser, and that was really nice. I've also signed up for EdRed's School Safety Advisory Committee and their Development and Outreach Committee. So as those kick into gear, I'll be providing updates, as relevant. And then last Friday, I was able to attend White Cane Day at Twain on Dr. Shapiro's invitation. And I want to thank her again for inviting me. One, what a joy it is to be back in the schools, getting to see the kiddos and the staff. This was just a really neat program that they organized. They have 2 students there, one is visually impaired and one is blind. And so they set up the day where all the different classes could go into their classroom and participate in tabletop activities with the goal of understanding how these 2 students will navigate their day at school. And what really struck me, just from the brief observation I made, was that to the students coming and visiting, it was already so normalized that these students might use a cane or might use different equipment or might, read differently than they do. And they were these are just other kids in their school. And I was really, really impressed with the kids and the staff, the way they approached all of this. Everyone seemed to have a really warm and exciting time. And again, thank you to Dr. Shapiro for inviting me. It was really an incredible experience.
Really cool. I got there as well.
Very good. Board member Stacy Getz is away on business travel tonight. That's why she is not here. Stacy, did you have anything else that you needed to share?
Just I also got to attend White Cane Day, and it was interesting, and I actually had a different takeaway, which is the mother of one of the young ladies was in there, and the little girl's probably a kindergartner, but the mother was there to sort of help out, and to watch the little girl not only be able to advocate for herself, but be able to translate for her mom. This is like a 6 or 7-year-old, but you could tell where she got her advocating skills was. And so I pulled one of the teacher's aides over, and the glimpse into that program in that day, but to really see a mom sitting next to her daughter and watching them advocating for each other in this really amazing experience. If you haven't had a chance to pop over and check it out, well worth it. But I did that, and then I got to, I was invited into Whitman on behalf of all of us to judge the pumpkin decorating contest. But I just wanted Dr. Conley to thank everybody for looping us in and inviting us to all of those things. I got an invite to go on another event, but I really want to thank the buildings for giving us the opportunity. We haven't been able to do it in a long time, and those 2 things over the last little while, I think, are why all of us are sitting up here.
Very good, thank you. All right, with that, we will move into staff communications. We've got 4 that are scheduled. Dr. Collins.
Good evening, everybody. We are very pleased to be able to present our second academic spotlight of the school year. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Reyes-Childress, our Assistant Superintendent for Equity and Learning, who she and her team have put together a really great presentation on STEM learning in CCSD21.
Good evening. This is actually a short video because I knew I was already going to be presenting slides, and I figured that you would appreciate not having me share 2 slide decks. And so I asked some of our team to put together a video, and then also so that you could hear from our teachers and hear from our students. And so Chris Lipatino, who is here with us this evening, who's our Director of Science and Social Studies, actually went out and grabbed the footage that you will see and hear directly from our students and our staff. And Alicia Duell, who is our Director of Technology and Information Systems, put it all together. So they kind of tag teamed on it. We met just a couple of times to just talk about the vision of what we would want to share with the board and the public. And I will say that I think that they did a fabulous job. And so we're excited to show that to you this evening.
STEM, or Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics, represents hands-on learning with real-world applications. This hands-on learning helps develop skill sets including creativity and 21st century skills. Skills developed through STEM education include media and technology literacy, productivity, social skills, communication, flexibility, initiative, problem solving, critical thinking, curiosity, decision making, leadership, entrepreneurship, and acceptance of failure. Our elementary STEM program is a kindergarten through 5th grade special for 1 hour each week. Lessons cover content in each of the 4 areas of STEM. There are currently new STEM spaces at Riley, Tarkington, and Twain, and in the summer of 2023, there will be additional STEM renovation at 2 to 3 schools.
Students are so excited to come into the new STEM space and participate in the science program. Not only is the space beautiful and inviting, but it's a great space for us, students and staff, to work in. One example of this is having a sink, which allows my STEM students to be more independent and take on a bigger role in the hands-on learning process. I'd say the excitement my students have for the new STEM room matches the excitement the STEM team instills in the lessons we design and teach our students.
Okay, ready, set, go. Awesome. Oh, look at that.
About STEM is when we were doing electric motors, because we got to make stuff on our own. I like that it's bigger and they have more materials.
Amplify is our primary resource for science classrooms in middle school. Lessons focus on science concepts through engineering lenses and activities. Simulation and modeling tools are also embedded.
My favorite part about Amplify is that it helps you build systems which are dangerous to build like in real life for middle schoolers, because in science we were making a system like a skateboard park, like a ramp, and you can't just go outside the school and build a ramp and get a skateboard for the kids to ride on it.
About Amplify is the simulations that we use, because I like building all of the simulations and playing around with the simulations so that I can see how things work without really having to like put through all of the work and like set it up and
Project Lead the Way is a middle school exploratory. In 6th grade, students take design and modeling. In 7th grade, they take flight and space. And in 8th grade, they take green architecture.
Yeah, so in PLTW, all three grade levels get to design solutions to study both concepts and to solve problems. When they design their solutions, they're able to actually build it, and they can test it as well. Once they test it, if they fail or if they didn't do as well as they wanted to, great! That's where they get all the learning. Not only does this help them learn concepts that are in engineering, but it also helps them learn how to work with other individuals and learn from their mistakes.
My favorite thing is in 6th grade for design and modeling. We went to this website called Tinkercad for 3D modeling, and we made old architectural things from the past, which are ancient buildings. And it's just like really cool because I'm really interested in 3D modeling when I'm older, so I can make a smaller version of it and then show it to my boss if I can get a job.
One of my favorite things about green architecture is, well, when I was younger, I actually wanted to become an architect. So being in a class where we get to use tools that help with that tends to help. Like we have these architectural rulers, 12-sided rulers. They work at different scales so that then we can draw buildings and get a reference to what their height, size, and etc.
We're gonna adjust the elevator down to make the plane go down.
So the plane should go down if the elevators are down. Okay, let's take a look. Did that happen the way that it should have happened?
Yep, yes.
Okay.
Camp Invention, sponsored by National Inventors Hall of Fame, was a 1-week summer camp hosted at CCSD21. The camp involves hands-on STEM activities where students collaborate and solve problems with peers. There were kindergarten through 8th grade opportunities for campers and counselors in training. This past summer's modules included robotic aquatics, spacecation, NIHF's The Attic, and Marble Arcade. After the Peanut was also a one-week summer camp hosted at CCSD21. It involved hands-on STEM activities where students could collaborate and solve problems with peers. After the Peanut had 4th and 5th grade opportunities for participation. It included 3 themes: coding, human body, and robotic hand.
Any questions for Dr. Schultz? No?
Not a question, just a couple of things. First of all, I was delighted to see the number of young women who were involved in these activities as well.
I have no idea what that is.
Okay, I thought I had a soundtrack all of a sudden.
No.
But that's the first thing. The second thing, I can tell you, my experience with Project Lead the Way goes back to my son entering Buffalo Grove High School quite a few years ago. He was the inaugural class of Project Lead the Way in District 214. And to the parents out there who are watching us or in the audience, the colleges, when he was going to visit colleges and talking to admissions people, would hear Project Lead the Way and their eyes would just light up. They would know the quality of the program going in and what these students have learned and been through. And it's just fantastic that we were able to bring this down from high school to middle school. So I really appreciate that, and I'm glad to see. And Chris, I hope you keep it flourishing. So that's it.
Yeah, in visiting the schools and seeing the new STEM centers in the buildings that we have recreated, the LMCs, I'm just awed by the potential for serious learning and for causing kids to want to explore, research, learn new things. They just lend itself to such a great experience. And what I'm looking for in the future is to see the rigorous curriculum that leads our children higher and further than they ever thought they would go in the first place.
Thank you. One of the things I think that stood out for me, outside of what both gentlemen said, was how well the students present their speaking abilities. Going back, not even that long ago, it didn't seem like the students, when they were either before us or in a clip like that, were quite as clear, quite as confident as every one of those students were. So I congratulate the team on that and the staff as well. So moving on to our next item.
Yes, sir. So it is that time of year when we like to take a moment to review where we are in some of our assessment data. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Reyes-Childress, who is going to be taking us through our fall NWEA MAP data review.
Okay. Before I get started to actually digging into the slides, I just want to acknowledge and thank Amy Kipley, who is our assessment and data manager. I will tell you that she gets frequent messages from me like, oh, I want to see this. I want to see this. How about this? And she'll send me something and I'll be like, oh, that's great. Now I want you to do this. And she always is just so accommodating and helpful. We've implemented some new reports also for our principals this year. And I will say that they really seem to be looking at them a lot and are referencing them when I meet with them regarding their school improvement goals. And so I just wanted to acknowledge her because she always says, okay, Beatrice, with a smile. And I'm sure sometimes she's probably like, what does she want that for? And some of it gets used and some of it doesn't get used, right? Once we see how what it tells us or what we thought it would tell us that it doesn't. So I just wanted to acknowledge her work because she works very hard for us on our team and in our district. Just a real brief overview of the presentation, right? I'll share some district demographics, overview and analysis of the MAP data, looking at both math and reading, the growth summary and achievement trends, some conclusions, and then also share next steps. In terms of our demographics, we haven't seen very much change from last year. A slight shift with a decrease in our Hispanic student percentage, but it's minimal. It's 2% shift. And so then, right, the other numbers shifted slightly as well. Our enrollment changes daily, so much so that I'll tell you that we had pulled this data on October 1st, and then, or I'm sorry, we pulled this data earlier in the year, and then as of October 1st, it's already 6,040. So, right, on any given day, you can shift the number of students that are showing as enrolled in the district. Still growing daily. In terms of our student demographics for English learners and students with IEP and low income, again, relatively stable since last year, no real significant changes.
Can I interrupt just real quick? When we look at low income, one of the things that I just want to point out is that as the pandemic hit, and we determine much of our low income rate based on free and reduced lunch counts, and so the last 2.5 years there's been free lunch across the board. So this is kind of a national issue where there's an under-identification of poverty rates as a result of that. So I just wanted to point that out.
Right, so these are the ones that are recorded, but we know realistically the numbers are probably higher, much higher than what we have actually reported. Thank you, Dr. Conley. I just wanted to take a moment to talk about MAP, just because even in a conversation earlier this week, there still seems to be some confusion. So I wanted to make sure I highlighted that MAP is a test that the district chooses to administer. Some people think it's a state test. It's not a state test. It's a nationally normed test that District 21 opts to administer 3 times a year. We give it to our 2nd through 8th grade students in reading and math. This is the first year this year that 2nd grade is taking MAP growth reading in all 3 benchmark testing windows. Previously, we would wait until the spring to have a data point as they went into 3rd grade. But now that our staff is getting used to administering the test and administering it to a critical mass, last year actually we got lots of requests. Could we just start 2nd grade in the fall so that they could watch those kiddos, which, right, when you have staff asking, can we give another test? You're kind of like, okay. But it has been giving us some really good data, and I think that's why the teachers advocated for that. The other pieces, right, that we get from MAP is it helps us monitor our student achievement and growth, right, by watching them in those 3 benchmarks. Unlike the state assessment that only happens in the spring or winter to spring, then by the time you get it again, right, like it's hard to react to what's happening with students. This allows us to look at where the students are, how are they growing, what's their achievement, and then make adjustments for them. It's beneficial for our teachers and our schools in that way. We're also using it to inform our MTSS system, which, right, we started with our framework last year, and we're seeing some really great things with that, and it helps with those meetings and reviewing data, both looking at a whole school-wide, looking at grade level data, but also looking at individual student data. And so our schools and our MTSS teams in the schools are looking at it very frequently. And then, of course, right, one of the reasons why a lot of districts use MAP is because you can use it to help predict how your students will perform on the state test. Any questions about that? Okay, so we'll jump into the data. We'll start with reading. Now, this is not a report that I have shown you previously, but we saw such great things in the data this year that I wanted to give you another view on what's happening with our students across the district. So this particular report shows you the grade level growth projections based on our district growth norms. So it's different than the other charts that I will show you. So this is just looking at our students, and then they develop a projection based on statistics, right? And so that projection is indicated by those orange diamonds. And then our actual observed growth is there in the blue bars. And so, of course, right, we want those blue bars to go further than those orange diamonds do. And, you know, this is much, when I pulled from previous years, this is a much improved situation, because we had it in previous years where the blue bars weren't anywhere near those diamonds. So that's definitely improvement. Oops, jumped here. Now these scores are the students, right? This is the nationally normed part. So all of the students across the nation that take MAP, right, they do the calculations and say, okay, should be the projected growth for any particular grade level. And the percentages you see on this chart indicate the number of students that we had in our district that met or exceeded those nationally normed projections. Now, right, thinking about it, that it's, you know, the statistical analysis on it, right, the bell curve. So anytime you're above that 50%, we're heading more where we want to be, right? But statistically, you know that everybody's not going to be in the 70th or 80th, right? Because just of the national norms projections. But these percentages actually are also higher than we have seen previously in the amount of students who are meeting their growth targets by grade level.
Excuse me, Beatrice, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Were these growth targets adjusted at all due to the pandemic? I mean, did they lower the targets at all? Or are we actually doing better even though the pandemic hit?
Well, right, so the growth targets were adjusted nationally, right, based on the pandemic. So, but what you'll see is, like, even if we're just looking at ourselves, I'll just give you an example. Right, last year, a couple of years ago, we were at, our all-student category was at 54%. So that were meeting their growth targets. So we have, right, a 3% increase, and that's even with knowing that we're testing more kids than we have previously. That's the other factor to always keep in mind, right, that we're testing a significantly amount more kids than we used to.
You said more than we need to?
Used to.
Used to.
Okay.
No, we don't want to test anybody just for giggles or kicks. No, we're focused on what we can glean from the data. This particular slide, again, right? So we see all of these subgroups are above the 50th percentile, so we're moving in the direction we want to. One of the things that I want to highlight for you here is, again, in previous years, we would see gaps in demographics. So for example, right, maybe our Asian population would have, you know, in the high 50s growth targets, but our Hispanic population did not, or our, you know, so for example, in fall 2020, our Hispanic population was at 52% that were meeting their growth targets. In this data, we see it's 57%, right? So we've increased 5% just in this short time that we've made some of these adjustments, which is, again, that's the direction, right? We want to move in that direction with more and more students meeting their growth targets. The other one that was really significant is our students that fall in the 2 or more races category. We're at the 40% of them meeting their growth targets, and here they're at 56. And again, we're talking 82 students across the district, but for those 82 students, that's really significant. And these demographics follow a similar pattern. So again, previously, right, we were right around the 50th percent of the students meeting their growth targets. Some of those were below, and now they're all, right, again, moving in the right direction. And if you look across, you don't see huge disparities between the groups like we used to. Any questions? Okay.
That's an amazing change over past years that we've looked, over past years when we've looked at this. That is an amazing change.
Yep.
Yeah, we're empowering our staff with data, and they are embracing it, right? When we first did it, it was a little bit not embraced as much, but now they're seeing the power of it and seeing the fruits of their labor. And that's what it's all about, right? Making sure that what we're doing has a positive impact on our students. And it is truly a district-wide effort, everybody pulling in the same direction.
It seems very, and I don't like to use, it seems like very targeted interventions. It seems like you're taking that data and being able, with your work groups and your building groups and what goes on, to really be able to take that data and turn it into very targeted interventions based on groups. Because we used to see much bigger swings in our demographics on the way they tested out. I mean, it's noticeable, the difference. You used to see much different disparities in our ethnicities and some of the other ones. And so would that be a fair assessment, that you're being able to use that data to really target more specific interventions, really even building by building, I would say?
Absolutely. And I think, right, we still see the disparities, and you'll see them when we start looking at the achievement data.
Sure.
But what's important to remember is growth is always looking at, for example, where did Beatrice start, and then how much has she grown? So you're measuring, right, a student against their self. When we look at achievement data, that's a different scenario, right? Because it doesn't take into account where the student started. It's just a flat, here's where the achievement is. So we still see the demographic disparities there, but we don't see it here, and that's part of the process,
Gotcha.
right?
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so again, remember that this is the first time that our second graders have taken the reading map in the fall. And so, right, there's gonna, they're a little bit lower than some of our other grade levels, but that's really to be expected for a couple of reasons. One, because they haven't taken it in the fall before, and they're still, little guys, but also because of our significant EL population, there are some students who would have taken this assessment in English who, right, they're still growing in their English at that grade level. But it is following the trend that we would want, right? Where that third grade, if we're looking at our high, average, and average, right? So we're looking at blue, green, yellow, kind of as a cluster, just because it's a little less overwhelming for people to think about it in those terms, right? We want to have at least our students in those color bands, but you see it going up at third, up a little bit more at fourth. We're kind of tapering off a little bit at fifth, but we're still working on those pieces. Any questions about that? Okay. And then sixth through eighth grade, again, right, we see it kind of going up, having a greater increase in the blue, green, yellow bands as we get to eighth grade, and that is what we want to see. That's the kind of trend that we want to see happening. I will highlight for you here, so last year, right, when we looked at this data, only our eighth grade was above that 50th percentile with those 3 bands. This year for reading, right, 7th and 8th, and 6th just missed it at 50 or 49%, just missed that kind of 50th. So if we just kind of think of that as just, again, not that it's where we want to be, but just being realistic about how can we measure and make sure that we're growing and making it simpler for staff to understand, right? then again, moving in the right direction because we're almost have all three above that, that 50th percentile. And then the fifth grade, as I showed here, is above that 50th percentile, which it was not last year. So again, not where we want to be, but moving in the right direction.
Well, I think at the end of a pandemic, to be moving in the right direction in and of itself is quite an accomplishment.
Lots of hard work with the staff. They are working really hard, our teachers and administrators and everyone in the system. So here again, this is where we do still see some demographic disparities, right? And again, remember that this does not take into account where the students came in. This is purely, right, the benchmark of the achievement. And so that's not a surprise. It's something we would expect to still see, that there's some demographic disparity. Same with these demographics with low income EL, IEP. Again, right, there's definitely work still to be done here. And so it is data that we are looking at, and our teachers and our teams are working hard to try and close those achievement gaps. Any questions about the reading data before I go to math? Okay, so same report, right? We want those blue bars to be higher than the orange diamonds, and they are. We actually see more significant growth with our math than our reading. And again, that's to be expected, right? With coming out of a pandemic, and things of that nature, a lot of districts saw their reading data more depressed than their math data. So that's, again, not a surprise, but definitely exciting, and we're moving in the right direction. Some of our buildings, even looking at these types of reports, had huge bars. Some of our buildings that typically maybe struggle a little bit more, like Twain, their blue bars were far above their orange diamonds. And so I was like, Alyssa, you got to share this with your staff because they need, right, to see that they're the fruits of their labor. And again here, so even just, right, reflecting on reading compared to math, I mean, these percentages, again, with the bell curve, anytime you're above that 50th percent, because it's a national, right, normed portion, then you're moving in the right direction. Some really great gains and growth targets here. And then again, right, we want to make sure that we acknowledge and note that less disparity between demographics of race and ethnicity, right? And that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that we're getting the percentages more on par with each other. And again, for, previous data, in a lot of these fell below 50 for these particular subgroups. So seeing them above that 50, those are some really excellent gains that have been made with making sure, tailoring to kids, making sure that all of our kids are growing. And then same for these subgroups. Some really strong numbers. The other thing that I'll share is that the target is pretty aggressive, right? So we have, when we just start disaggregating the data, we look at, and we encourage our building teams to look at what are the kids that they just missed hitting that growth target. And that's a whole nother group of kiddos that then we hone in on and look at to try and push them over that threshold. And I think that's too why you're seeing these increase in numbers, because they're paying attention to who's just underneath that threshold.
I just, on that slide, I think it's extraordinary. The EL and IEP number percentage is so high compared to everybody else. That's really pretty amazing and very positive.
Absolutely. And then again, remember, these are the achievement data slides, and so we kind of spend time looking at our blue, green, yellow slides, or data points, and focusing in on making sure that they keep growing. in each of those grade levels. And again, last year, we only had 8th grade that was above that 50th percent of those 3 color bands, and now we have other grades that are also over the 50% with those color bands. Similar to reading, right, we still see demographic achievement gaps here in the data. And so that will be a long, right, focus and process to continue to see, to try and close those gaps. But we're working on it. And then the same for our low-income EL IEP demographics. So strengths for this particular benchmark data, right, that for the projected growth norms were met or exceeded for all grade levels for reading and math, right? So those blue bars with the orange diamonds were, right, either at or right above those, so that's definitely a strength. And then this is what I was kind of already mentioning, that the majority of our 5th, 7th, and 8th grade students scored in the average to high levels for performance in reading, as compared to last year that it was only 8th grade that were 50%, higher than 50%. And then again, same for math. 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 8th were above that 50% for those 3 color bands, and last year it was only 8th. And that is even, again, there's a couple of grade levels that are like at that 49th, right? Just under that, getting over that majority amount. Of course, areas needing attention, right? We still see the achievement gaps in both reading and math. And so that's something that we don't want to lose sight of. And that's why we keep our eye on that, not just looking at growth, but always looking at achievement as well. And then continuing to improve our Tier 1 instruction for our students, because that's the instruction that all kids get, right? And so we need to make sure that it's as strong as possible so that less students need that Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction. So in terms of next steps, right, continuing with our data dives with the district and school teams, again, both our administrators and our teachers are getting really good at disaggregating data now, and they're a lot more comfortable than they were even a year ago. And I think that's really helping them with figuring out how to best help students and make sure that they're moving and progressing with their achievement and their growth. We still are working on the triangulation of data. MAP gives us some really good information, and it's nationally normed, so we're able to do a lot of different comparisons, but we also have our common assessments, which are specific to our curriculum. And so those are pieces that our teams look at. And then, of course, their own teacher classroom data, right? Because we want to look at more than one data point to have a real good picture of what's happening with our students. I already talked about Tier 1. And we're still working with our language of instruction for our ELs and trying to challenge our students more with their acquisition of English. And then monitoring of the goals and action items with the school improvement plans. Again, I will tell you that this year when I met with principals about their school improvement goals, they were able to articulate and discuss and share what they wanted those goals to be. And a big piece of that is that we were arming them with the information that they needed, which was different, right? So it's not that they were incapable before, they just didn't have all the information that they needed to be able to make some, the SMART goals and make sure that they were measurable and time specific. And so, I want to just compliment them and the school improvement teams in the buildings, the new PLC teams, because they're working really hard. And I definitely think that we see it in our growth data. That's all I have for you this evening.
Excellent presentation.
Nice. Thank you.
Excellent information.
Great presentation, thank you.
And thank your
so
staff
much.
for making such an ADA compliant presentation for those of us who are colorblind challenged. So,
Bill, move
Yes.
your microphone closer, please.
I was just thanking Dr. Childress for providing an ADA compliant presentation for those of us who are colorblind.
Thank you again. Good information. Moving on to our next topic.
Yes.
Dr. Conley?
Yes. So let me just, if I can just add a few more comments from the map data review. You know, one of the things that I want to just remind everybody is the journey that we have been on over the past several years. When we did our systems assessment in 2018-2019 school year, and when this board conducted its first strategic plan in several decades, it set a course. And the information that we gained from that process really gave us a lot of the foundational work that needed to occur, and needed the standardization of curriculum across the district to ensure that all of our first grade teams were had a common curriculum that was being implemented with fidelity, that we were ensuring that the kind of resources and the kind of instructional efficacy that needs to be in place to support kids was increasingly part of the work we were doing in our classrooms. And the assessment in and of itself, our assessment model was very spotty. It was one that excluded large number of students, particularly our second language students. And so just having the quality of data that we have now, so, we have a long road to go, but just to be able to kind of point to all of the work, hard work that has been done by the staff, by teachers, by administrators, by the kids, and that's in spite of a massively disruptive global pandemic. So, this is work that we are still very early on in. This is Beatrice and her team. This is their second year together as a unit, and our student services teams. This is their fourth year together. So, it is something that for me, I just wanted to point out that we're very, very encouraged by what we're seeing. That the things that we are doing are starting to give us some good indicators, and so we need to double down and keep doing it because we want to make sure that we're able to really be collectively efficacious in the work that we do with all of our students. So with that, I'll transition into just a brief update on the implementation of our equity action plan. And I say brief because this originally had been intended to be a little bit more of a comprehensive, and life got in the way. So we did have to reschedule for various reasons our district equity leadership team meeting, which we have met. And started to have some really, really good conversations as we were reviewing the year one implementation report, and also, tried to cram 6 hours worth of discussion into an hour and a half long meeting, and then just said, okay, we need to keep this, we need to come back together again and spend some more quality time around that. And then likewise, we delayed the meeting of the Superintendent's Equity Advisory Committee as a result of the DELT committee needing to be rescheduled. We met that group met on Monday. So some great conversations that have started as we're reviewing the significant amount of work, equity work that was being performed by the district last year. And by the way, very much just as part and parcel of the work we were doing. So, we were so focused on pandemic response and getting kids back in, and, but even within that, we were making major shifts in our programming models and our improvement, our guided reading, all of these different things, which tie directly back to the equity action plan. So it's even kind of taking that moment to take stock and just kind of capture everything that we did and are doing that ties directly to the equity action plan. I think one of my major takeaways is that the universe doesn't care what our timeline is. And so this concept of a year one plan, a year two plan, I think we're going to move away from being those rigid time-based structures because they're not serving us well. I mean, we're doing the work and we're going to continue to do the work, and it's going to be something that just kind of naturally we're going to continue to evaluate, add objectives, expand, take 2 steps back and 4 steps forward, as the life of, the journey of life is. So, we'll be bringing a more comprehensive description, if not, probably not in November, because that's like 3 weeks away, the next board meeting, but likely in December, once we have the opportunity to have a few more conversations with the DELT and CEAC. So that is my equity action report. That's it.
Fourth item?
I wanted Michael DiBartolo just very briefly give a status update on our preparations for summer 2023 construction. So I'll take it over.
I'm happy to report that the bids were posted today and are being distributed to those seeking to bid on the project tomorrow morning. We're looking to open those bids the first week of November with an approval at the December meeting. Assuming that everything meets the criteria we're looking at, we'll issue some correspondence to go ahead and get people starting moving on projects, so long as we have consensus that those numbers are acceptable for the summer work. We are pre-purchasing even a month and a half earlier than we did last year, all of our HVAC equipment, so that we hopefully beat the rush and the timelines with supply chain issues. And now that we are out to bid for this, we will begin working on the design of the playground or playgrounds that we plan on doing for next summer.
Okay. Any questions for Michael? Nope. All right. Thank you, Dr. Conley and Beatrice and Michael. Appreciate the staff communications and updates. Move into board discussion. We have one item, and that is the resolutions for the delegate assembly in November. Debbie?
Hopefully everybody has had a chance to look them over. I just want to give a brief overview on everything. On November 3rd, I will be attending the webinar where they will be going over everything. So if there's any updates to anything, I'll make sure that I report back at the November meeting before we have the assembly. There are a couple of amendments to the IASB Constitution. On Section 2, the term of office, instead of having 2 one-year terms for the president and vice president, et cetera, they're changing it to 1 2-year term. That way they won't have to go through all of the nominations and all the searches and all the interviews for what is pretty much just given.
Yeah.
It has been given. Then there's a spot where it says that the belief statements are now, they just changed the name to the core values. Reorganized it a little bit, and that everything changes to the belief statement or the core values must be approved by a 2/3 vote, by a supermajority. And then in Section 5, for appeals for any any resolutions that are put out there that the committee says do not adopt, it used to be up to 8 days before III that they could say, no, I want to appeal this. And they said that was just a logistical nightmare for them. So now they're going back to what the bylaws say. Now, if anybody has any questions on any of these, just feel free to butt in, or let me know if you haven't had a chance to really look them over. There are 8 resolutions. One has to do with fund balances, that they said we should adopt that. And there's a link in your agenda for anybody who hasn't looked.
Speak into the mic a little more.
Number 2 is about alternative fuel busing. They said do not adopt. The firearm dealer location, they said no. And for the audience, I want to let everyone know the reason they said do not adopt is because of the problems for those locations that are currently less than the 1,500 feet, because the current rule is 500 feet, and anything that is between the 500 and the 1,500, they would have to have, they would probably have, especially down south, there would be so many waivers that they would have to administer and everything. They said that one did not make sense for us to say adopt, so that's a do not adopt. Capital grant funds for school buildings was an adopt. School safety fund is an adopt. Involvement with candidates for public office, they said no, they just wanted to keep the language as it is. They did not want to make the changes that they had recommended or that had been requested. A mandates review committee was yes. In other words, we need somebody to look over all these unfunded mandates. And I have a feeling Bill might have something to say under number 8, which was financial contributions for school board elections. They said yes, adopt. That meant that if you're in an area where you have a lot of advertisements that you need to do to be on the school board, you could not accept money from a PAC or anything like that. Because I know Bill went into that more.
Well, you and I talked Here you go, Aaron. You and I talked earlier about that. I understand the rationale, and I agree with the rationale that our elections are nonpartisan, and they should remain nonpartisan. There's concern with what's going on in some of our neighboring states, and rightfully concerned. However, I think the solution here wouldn't stand up to a challenge, a legal challenge. Our current Supreme Court has equated money with speech. And I would really question whether the resolution would be constitutional or enforceable. Given that our government relations staff would have to spend time in this, and eventually our legal staff would have to spend time in this, I don't know that this is a good way for us to go forward as an organization. I mean, IASB. If they wanted to amend their resolution at some point to more forcefully state that we believe our elections should remain nonpartisan, absolutely support that. But I just think that it's a waste of time believing that the Supreme Court would, given a challenge, knock this down. That I don't know that the do adopt makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, this one I figured after our discussion that I would be bringing this back in November. I have a feeling this is going to be one that is going to be talked about a lot at the webinar.
I agree with Bill on that.
This is number 8. So we can discuss in November, I'll just go through the numbers and say, do we agree with what is recommended? And then I'll make my list for how I will vote at the meeting. The new thing that they're doing, which is going to be a huge time saver, any resolutions that are essentially the same as have been presented last year, they are not even presenting. It's like they don't exist, so we don't have to worry about people coming back year after year after year with the exact, I mean, some of them were almost the same wording. So that will save a lot of time. And then there were 14 position statements with deletions and amendments, and I looked through and I didn't have any issues with any of those. So again, I'll accept everybody's comments next month so I know exactly how to vote.
Did anybody have any comments at this point for Deb?
No.
Okay.
Other than number 8, we'll wait.
For those in the audience, so you may be wondering what in the world we're talking about. This is the State Association, Illinois Association of School Boards, has a representative body, the Delegate Assembly, and they vote on various positions, as Debbie was just going through, on an annual basis every year. And this gives a direction to IASB's governmental relations people as to what they should be looking to do with the state representatives and senators. So by IASB passing this, it doesn't mean it becomes law or gets changed. It means this is our roadmap to talk to the General Assembly folks to try and put across what the 850 school districts in Illinois are thinking about various topics, okay? So.
Although there are only about 400 that attend the assembly.
Be that as it may. That is the representative group.
Yes.
Okay. We now move into public comment. Anyone that has a public comment, they step up to the podium. You have 3 minutes. And we ask that it does not deal with personnel issues. If those should go to the appropriate school-based principal. So the first person is Sherry Williams. Sherry, welcome.
Oh, my goodness.
No, just the top part.
Just the
Ben.
top.
The very top.
Okay. I'm vertically challenged.
Where are we?
Good evening. My name is Sherry Williams. I come to you tonight as a parent and a Be Smart for Kids volunteer for the Northwest suburbs. My youngest son attended London Middle School and then went to Wheeling High School. I stand before you tonight to urge the board to approve a proclamation to send safe gun storage information to D21 parents and guardians. Research shows that 4.6 million children live in a house with an unlocked, loaded gun in the U.S., and firearms are the leading cause of death of children as of 2022. As high as 76% of shooters under the age of 18 obtain the gun from their home or the homes of relatives or friends in school shootings or gun-related incidents on school grounds. I'm sure that many of you or most of you are aware of the incident at Holmes Middle School a couple of weeks ago where the school was on a lockdown because a child or student brought an airsoft gun on school grounds. So the Uvalde shooting is still very raw. The one in Oxford, Michigan was only just last November. It took the Parkland massacre to get me off the sidelines and become involved in this movement. Just a couple of weekends ago, there were several incidents of gunfire at high school football games. In addition, almost 700 children died by gun suicides, and in 2020, this had reached its highest rate for kids under 17 years old. All of these shootings and deaths are preventable. By disseminating information to adults on safe gun and ammunition storage, we are literally saving lives. The simple Be Smart message educates adults to secure all guns in homes and vehicles, model responsible behavior by ensuring kids don't have the opportunity to access guns, ask about unsecured guns in other people's homes, recognize the role of guns in suicide, and tell others the Be Smart message. It is a nonpartisan way to inform people on keeping guns out of the hands of children, since it is always the adult's responsibility to keep our kids safe. School districts across the country have approved this safe storage proclamation. Please take this easy action and help give families peace of mind that we are all doing as much as we can to keep our kids safe so that they can come home at the end of the day. Thank you for your time. And I do have information regarding Be Smart, a school safety and secure firearm storage, and a sample letter of what can be sent to families.
Sherry, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Anything you wanted to give, what you said, take that from me. Thank you very much.
Okay. The next speaker is Michelle Prado, is it? Welcome.
Welcome, thank you. Very much like the communication that was just given, I have a second grader in the community. And
Michelle, I'm
Speak
sorry,
louder,
could
I
you
can't hear
raise that a little bit? There we go, there we go.
I have a second grader in the community, and she was a bystander of one of the events that happened this last week, where one of her classmates was playing tag at recess and was frustrated with the outcome of tag and had indicated that they had a gun in their backpack. And speaking with her, talking and asking how did she feel about it, she said she was very nervous, very scared, because this was her first experience with it. So what's brought me here today is to ask all of you, Why should she even experience it once? So I think the gun violence is very important. It's in our community, and it's very real. I know the beginning of this conversation started with there being a movement. Me being a parent in this community, I'm showing my representation that I would like to see this move forward and that this not become the norm, that the emotional response to frustration of children, especially at the age of 7, of playing tag at recess is resulting in the response of, I need a gun. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, is there anybody virtually? Okay. Okay, that concludes the public comment section. There is the
Consent
next
agenda.
Oh, thank you. Yes, consent agenda.
2 months in a row,
Anybody
you're going
needs
to go without
anything?
paying some people? Is that it?
What's that?
2 months in a row, we're going to go without paying people?
Yes.
That didn't happen, by the way. Anybody else?
We need to be careful about what we say off the cuff. Yes, consent agenda. Does anybody need anything pulled? Sorry about that.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Thank you. Jessica?
Bill?
Aye.
I vote yes. Stacy Allen?
Yes.
Debbie?
Yes.
Phil?
Aye.
Arlen?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next meeting of the board is on November 10th, which is the second Thursday as opposed to the third. The third week is our professional development workshop and conference downtown, put on by the IESB, IESA, and school business officials. Don't want to leave the school business officials out of that. So with that, let me, before we adjourn, as we have now completed our 4 ribbon cutting ceremonies, I just want to take a quick second to thank our internal staff that has been involved in the preparation of the construction portion of that. Everybody who had a part in making the design work. And thank our external contractors, our design and architect, Archon and Nicholas and Associates for the great work that was done and celebrated. And as long, Kelly, as you're here, thank you once again on behalf of the board for your tireless work back in 2017 and 18. We really appreciated it. With that, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Jessica?
Phil?
Aye.
Debbie?
Yes.
I vote yes. Stacy Allen?
Yes.
Arlen?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We're adjourned.